Good afternoon. Happy Sunday afternoon. Welcome to Let's Talk Maywood on Diversity Today Media Special Election Edition. This is our last podcast before the election takes place on Tuesday in Maywood. So please get out and vote. But before we bring on our guests, I would like to bring on my co-worker, my co-laborer in the vineyard, and expert investment advisor, Terrence Hollingsworth. Good afternoon, Terry.
Good afternoon. How you doing?
Good, bro. Went to church today, heard a good message, and the message basically trust God, not man. So it was a good day today. How's everything going with you?
Not bad. I'd like to say I was at church. However, I was not.
Well, so, they say
you know, maybe next week, right?
Look, you don't have to be at church physically. Nowadays, you can be on virtually. You know what I'm saying? You can be at home in your wardrobe or whatever, and have church in your crib. So it's all good, man. Look,
yes,
this is the last podcast before the election on Tuesday. How do you think, from your vantage point, how do you think things are going overall?
Well, I'm interested. Like, I try not to do predictions very well, but I've paid attention. I know voter turnout is not what it should be, or not what we would hope. I think it's around 2%, not much more than that. And that's a problem, right? We can't change our communities, our country, or anything like that without active community engagement. And so we hope that people get the message, right?
Yeah.
Go ahead.
It's disturbing to hear that only 2% of the residents have taken advantage of early voting. And like you said, we can't change it. But, with you being in Iowa, you're very much engaged with what's going on with politics out there, as I am out here in the DMV. If there's anything that can be done in the future, because we don't know what the turnout is going to be on Tuesday, but how do we get more souls to the polls, in your opinion?
I'm glad you asked that question, because one of the things that I've tried to do with DTM, Diversity Today Media, we're trying to make sure we do a good job of building out a trusted network of civic-minded people that will host house parties. We do it all the time here in Iowa. We send candidates to other people that we know, because we need candidates to come into the Black community in the same way that they go into white communities and in people's homes. And when that happens, voter turnout is higher. Community engagement is higher, right? And so that's what I hope that we can do, because at the end of the day, it's in small pockets that we can make change. It's all about grassroots organizing. And once we do that and we do it well, then we can see our own people that have our same belief systems in the office, and hopefully making changes that matter.
I'm glad you mentioned that, like going to the homes, inviting the candidates. Years ago when Mayor Freelon became mayor, he would invite. He had an open invitation for going to people's homes, not just knocking on doors, but going into homes. Not just, of course, he went to churches and things like that, but he was real personable. He would go to baseball games, during Little League baseball season, go to basketball games or, school events and things like that. His face was in a place. And that's what helped launch him as the first Black mayor in the history of Maywood. And it followed others behind him, Mayor Connor, Mayor Yarbrough, and, others, Mayor Don Williams. But somehow we lost that zest to become a grassroots initiative. So I'm glad you mentioned that. And certainly, it's going to take more than just going to an invitation or a party or a home, right? I mean, that's just a start, right?
No, I think that's the core way that we get people showing up, right? Um, we were fortunate to be able to host a lot of candidates in the past, and I could tell you there's real follow through between people that will come to a house party to people that showed up to vote, and quite honestly, I'll talk about 2019 a little bit, but there are people that had an experience with Elizabeth Warren that they did not have with Cory Booker, and couldn't tell them about any other candidate Elizabeth Warren made them feel. And
Mm-hmm.
so ultimately, she didn't win Iowa, right? But she was viable here, and people were voting for her.
Indeed. Well, we're now going into probably one of the most critical elections in the history of Maywood. Is fraught with allegations and you know um, hidden agendas, um, backbiting, divisiveness, social media bullying, if you will, and you know it could be a blessing or it could be a curse to have this level of competition. We'll find out on Tuesday, but you won't know unless you vote. So I'm hoping that cooler heads will prevail after this election because sometimes you know election season can get quite heated. But in Village of Maywood, it seems like it is over 360 degrees, if you will. So we're gonna bring on two guests tonight. One is running for trustee, one is running for mayor.
Yeah. I'll say this as I sign off.
Mm-hmm.
Um, there is the one thing that's absolute is that Maywood is facing a structural change of who they are as an organization or as a village. Just like under the Trump administration,
Yeah,
he's structurally trying to change who the country is, right?
yeah,
There was a lot
yeah.
of people that believed in Donald Trump and things that he was saying, and then he got in office, and guess what? He
It
was
turned
taking
out.
those same liberties and those rights away the same people that voted for him. And so that is something that we should all take into account as we're voting, that the person that we're voting for, does they really reflect our goals? Does his vision match our vision? And that's just the way it is. So with that,
Indeed.
I'm gonna be off so the candidates can have as much time as they need. I'll see you
Thank you,
guys
sir.
later.
All right, bro. So, as Terry mentioned, we are at a pivotal time of this election season, especially for the village of Maywood. So, I would like to bring on our two candidates who have, kindly distributed some of their time towards us this evening. The first is the Village of Trustee candidate, Eileen Olivier. I'd like to bring her on first. Madam Olivier, are you with us?
Here, I'm here. Thank you for having me. I really appreciate the opportunity to introduce myself to some and just give some information on my platform.
Absolutely. Well, thank you for joining us this evening on Sunday evening at that. So, I want to start off by, for those who don't know Eileen Olivier, I mean, certainly you've been very engaged and active in the village of Maywood. I can attest for that with your two sons being part of our financial literacy program. So, I hope they're taking these skills and elevating it to the next level. But again, it starts with you and husband, and you're doing great things in the village. So, for those who don't know Eileen Olivier, who are you?
Okay, well, I'm a mom, like you said, a wife. My husband and I have been here in Maywood since 1999. So about 26 years, came in March, actually. So, and we've been here on 19th Avenue, and it has been a really great experience to me because I came from the Austin area. So I came from, near Laramie, between like Laramie and Central. between Washington and Lake Street. And so, we grew up in an era of the 70s where families all connected, that we didn't have social media. So the porch was your social media. You sat on the porch and you talked to your neighbors, and at night, they would wind down, and that's where they would end up. And so I really appreciate that lifestyle and that way of growing up, just being connected to a community. And I found that spirit here in Maywood. When we moved here, we bought the worst house on the block. And so my realtor was like, "You want that piece of crap?" We're like, "Yeah, we really do," because it was beautiful to us. It was a Victorian house, and my husband and I were doing a lot of the work ourselves. We were young, just, starting out. So I think I was like 25, 26. And just, we did a lot of the stuff to rebuild the house ourselves. And it was just it was a great experience. And we would talk to the neighbors. Cy Bounds lived across the street. Linnell Grace would give us the history of Maywood, Mr. Sanders, Miss Fox. So we had these elders that really poured into us. And when we had a house fire, they came out and they gave us a lot of support. And they said, if we understand if you guys move on, because, as young professors, we had, the means to just, move anywhere. But we were like, no, we're going to stay here. Maywood has the community spirit and the potential that we appreciated. So we rebuilt our house here. And along with it came extra taxes and just more opportunity for us to figure out how can we maximize what we're paying to get out of it better services. So, that started me and, really getting to know the community and what do we have to offer here and how can I help it?
So in other words, you was trying to look at how you could maximize your return on investment, your return in your community, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah. You mentioned two names who were cherished by the village, the late Cy Bounds and Linnell Grace. Definitely pillars in the community. They were all about community, man. They were advocates for the youth, the seniors, just programs. So those are two assets to the community that are deeply missed. I tell you that for sure. So, so good stuff. You decided to move to Maywood in 1995. So you saw potential in Maywood. And you mentioned that you wanted to get a return on this investment, but you faced that, that challenge of paying high taxes, high property taxes in particular, right? So,
Absolutely.
so as you going through this cycle, how long did it take? What was that pivotal moment when you said, you know what, I need to be part of the solution and not just be on the sidelines, just worrying if taxes will reduce somehow miraculously? When did that happen for you?
Well, for me, it was when I had kids. So when my kids were born, I had two boys, and I would take them through programs. So we would go to the park district, and at the time, the park district was struggling, but they still, would find things to do. So they had services that we can get into, and so I was just like, my husband ended up volunteering for the park district, and then we got involved and started to help them when they rebuilt some of the parks, and they had the community come to do it together. So we got involved in that. And then when we went to school, we went to join Washington School when it turned over and became a dual language school. I know the community, initially they were not in full support. We were actually looking for a dual language school. So that was something that we wanted for our kids. So we were looking outside the village and looking to pay. And then we were like, okay, here's something free, public education. They get an opportunity to start a school. So I joined a PTO or started a PTO because they didn't have one initially. So I started a PTO there. And that is really how I started really getting involved in politics of the community.
Nice. So I'm sure there was a lot of resistance to, Washington, restructuring and becoming, it was a dual language academy, Washington Dual Language Academy. Is that correct?
Right. Yes.
So, I mean, for so many decades, it was the, Washington Wildcats. I mean, it was known as Washington. So, I knew there was resistance coming from the community, but, it was a necessary change. But with that came an increase in, the Hispanic population as well, because now you started to see things are starting to change, evolve with the dynamics, the demographics in Maywood. What are your thoughts about that in terms of the increase in what they say Latino, Hispanic population as it relates to Maywood, at least during our time, starting off was mostly African American?
Yeah, I think that, migration is just a story of America, right? So we have people that, generally move from one area to another looking for better, quality of life, more jobs, more opportunity. And, as African Americans, we did the same thing coming from Mississippi, Arkansas, wherever. And looking for that opportunity. So my grandparents did it as they came into the West Side area, and it was a Polish community. And the guy who sold them the house was, their neighbors were not happy with that, but we follow that flow. And I think that right now Maywood is experiencing the same thing. We have 30% of our population that's counted as they're Hispanic and heritage. So we have to be able to represent everyone. We have to be able to be fair in our government, because these all are people that are contributing to the way that Maywood is made up now. And so they are taxpayers. They deserve the same services and the opportunities that everyone else does.
Indeed. As you so succinctly mentioned, our folks traveled from the South, the Jim Crow South at that time, and settled at least in Chicago, different areas, whether it's the South Side or the West Side or even part of the North Side even. But they were primarily in the South and West Side before we flowed into the West suburbs. And, you raised a great point on the evolution of population change over the decades. So as you see that, and you step into this role as a candidate for the Village of Maywood trustee, what are your thoughts on having a all-encompassing, inclusive agenda for not only the African American population, even there are some whites that Caucasians still live in Maywood, but also equally important, the Hispanic population. You hear them saying there aren't enough programs for us. You're not doing enough for us. So how does that look for you as a candidate?
Well, I think that, at the bottom of it, we're all Maywoodians, right? So it doesn't matter. And I have a saying while I'm on the campaign trail, it doesn't matter if you came from Mexico or Mississippi, we're all Maywoodians now, right? And so we all want the same thing. We want our roads repaired. We want our streets to be clean. We want safe places for our kids and our families, ourselves. In the bottom of it all, the taxpayers want and need the same services. So I think that if we are able to supply them with those services, people will be happy no matter where they're coming from.
We'll all celebrate it in one voice. Is that correct?
That's it. And that's the way that, and when we talk to people on the North End, this is, and so there's a multitude of nationalities in that area. And it's something too that I have is a little bit of I'm not mad about it, but I would like to see both sides of the track to look the same, to have that same appearance. Why is North Maywood any different from South Maywood or on the other side of the track? Like, this is where I am. And so when I go to North Maywood, and I'm thinking like, wow, why is there such a difference? And so being able to, as a government, to make sure services are equally distributed and handled in the same manner, no matter where the person lives or where they come from.
Indeed. I love that, because history records that all of Maywood was one and the same. If you look at the housing stock on the opposite side of Lake Street, of the railroad tracks, even the housing stock, even close to, the police station, like the homes over there are larger than they are off any other area, but it was all Maywood. It was just people moved in different, and plus in the early 1900s, through like when blacks started moving in, the white flight, as they called it, in the late 1960s, a lot of Caucasian people stayed on the north side, and we were only allowed on the south side, and that's where redlining took place. And so, so I think that was that divisive of attitude, and I only know that just from living in Maywood for so many years, and plus, when I was going for my graduate degree and my dissertation, it was focused on part Maywood. So I learned a lot from that historical perspective. So I can tell you, though, I agree with what you're saying. It shouldn't matter if you're on the north side of the tracks or on the south side of the tracks. It should all be the same flow, same.
Mhm.
So here you are running for part district. I'm not part district, but trustee for the
Right.
village of Maywood. I only said part district because Terry puts on in the background say part district. But before I ask you a question about the part district, Eileen, I want to ask you what your agenda is as a candidate for trustee in the village of Maywood. What does that look like for you?
Well, for me, I want to focus on one, building back our community spirit. So bringing in those committee and commissions that were citizen led. Initially, when I and my husband also, he was a part of the Preservation and Historic Commission. I was a part of the Beautification Commission, and these commissions were. They were done away with by the current administration. And I just would like to bring that back, because when you have a community that's involved in the government, then you say, well, why don't people come out to vote? Why don't they participate more? But if you are pushing them away and not giving them the opportunity to have say and to have purpose, then you get this divide. So if we are able to bring people back in, and so that's one of the things that I would like to focus on. I would also like to focus on some of our vacant lots in these abandoned apartments and properties that we have throughout the village, because those are the things that we can use to help lower our tax rate amongst other homeowners. So spreading that out by adding more properties to our current tax roll will help us to stabilize that our housing market, and bring more people into the fold, so thus reducing our taxes. So I would like to work on that, but diversifying our housing stock, so we're not just like focused on senior housing or low income housing. We don't want to be stuck in a space. We want to also look into luxury homes and student housing, and making sure that we're working with Dominican University, Loyola University, and saying like, look, we have housing that your students will love, and they would love to be a part of this community because these are the assets that we have available. Making sure that we're focusing on transit-oriented development, building along our train line. Many communities around us are doing that. Oak Park is a prime example. They might be doing it too much, but it's just to get some would be a great improvement just in what we're offering to young people as they look to say, what community would I like to see myself in? And it's something that is growing. It's Maywood.
Absolutely. And also certainly that'll generate more revenue into the community as that decreases rather the property taxes, because you have that build up a community. And you also mentioned about housing. When you have more housing, that puts it back on the roll, decreases tax, increase revenue, increased opportunities for employment, decrease crime. It's just the whole gamut. And I can tell you that I agree with you spot on with the housing. But you mentioned something about student housing. You mentioned Dominican University, Loyola University. There are other universities that are right around the corner. Even Triton College. I think Terry, he lived in Maywood while he was a student at Triton College. So there are opportunities like that exist. Why do you think that doesn't exist now? And what can you do to change that?
Well, I don't know exactly why it doesn't exist now, because it's not difficult. I've actually worked with even the veteran department is Hines, and Hines. They were looking for housing for a lot of their members, and they'll look through the community, and there's no liaison to help them with that. So it would be the person, their real estate person, would reach out to different realtors in the area and just say, can you help me with this? So if we had someone that was just focused on that, focused on housing at a higher level, that was looking into those partnerships and partnering with students from Loyola, because I've worked with several students and was able to house some students in a unit for one of my clients, and getting those students in helped him pay his mortgage, so he's like living rent free. So it's just the opportunity to offer those students and Loyola students are always looking to be a part of the community because they're also volunteered at the Maywood Peace Garden with Barbara Cole. And those students would come every day and they would talk about how can we get more involved? What can we do to be a part of the community? And so, things like that, making those partnerships, I think, is what our village administrators need to focus on.
Indeed. One thing that I can attest for sure, when my nonprofit organization, Eternal Light Community Services, were utilized in the 200 building or the former Boys and Girls Club, or, back in the early 2000s, we had a partnership with Loyola University, and the medical students, the Loyola State School of Medicine, and they were all in. They were all in with volunteering, tutoring, and mentoring. We had almost 100 children every single night, our after school program, and they would come like 12 to 15 students every single night, Monday through Friday, faithfully. And we had a program with Dominican University. It was an eating healthy program. We had our great volunteers who participated from Dominican. They actually had a cooking class, and they came in and they taught cooking, how to eat healthy and things like that. And just tell you, the whole vibe was on 10. It was really high. So just knowing from experiences of being part of the Village of Maywood for so many years, that what you're saying is right on point. They definitely want to interact with the village, and it's not fake. It's something that they are genuinely interested in, and not just being, higher level first people in their career.
No, and I have an example too, because I worked with I met these two doctors when we were doing the Peace Garden, and I asked them about starting a medical program for young people. So we worked together to bring in the Little Medical School. Little Medical School was a program introducing young people to the opportunity of medical careers, and just knowing that only 6% of our people in the Maywood area went to get healthcare jobs within Loyola. Wow. It was just, how do we bridge that gap? How do we increase that? And so they were willing to work with me. We tried to get it at the Park District, but the Park District was going through whatever turmoil they were going through and being dictated to at the time.
Yeah,
they pushed us away. Mm-hmm. So it was difficult to do that, but we ended up partnering with Isaiah Brandon. He was able to get us into Proviso East in the social justice room. And so we were able to put it on for the kids. And it was just Loyola partnered with us. Those doctors went to the Park District with me several times to petition to the Park District to we're not demanding, but we were really asking why wouldn't you allow us? And they were ready to fight for it.
That's amazing. So they were always in tune with the community. One of the doctors that come to mind, it was over 10 years ago now, but Dr. Gary Sigmund. I mean, he was one of the most pivotal doctors who came all the time. This guy was a doctor, medical doctor, who saw clients, performed surgeries and things like that, yet took the time. Even the dean of the medical school came and donated 10 computers to the community center when we were there. So, so I feel what you're saying. And it can be frustrating when you're not working collaboratively or as partners. So I'm glad you were able to streamline that energy to secure a partnership at Proviso. But speaking of frustration, I just want to know, what is or was your level of frustration when you see what's going on in the Village of Maywood? As a parent, an active parent, and now as a candidate for trustee, the things that's circulating about the mayor and how the salary increases are so high and how he's connected to other things outside of that being the mayor, and even the blind support from trustees, and in some cases the community. Is that frustrating for you, or if so, what are your thoughts about that, dealing with that?
Because I follow politics in the way people react to it. So I've been watching these reactions from some people that, like you say, they have this blind following of individuals. And, we learned in history over and over again that doesn't pay off. You really need to question. And when you question something, it actually makes that other person better. So to continue allowing things that that are not true that are like patently false. And so those things are a little frustrating because people, no matter what, they want to go with their team. My team, no matter what you say, you can't convince them, which is fine, but it's affecting all of us. So this is a problem at this point. It's a problem. And so what I've found really hard to deal with is this the strong mayor form of government. I just find that not enough information has been given to the residents, to the voters, to allow them enough time and enough information to actually make an informed choice on that. So I think that even the people that put it together, which is this administration, they didn't even have the information. So they didn't even know all of the details that went into doing this. And I find that to be very, it's just a terrible process to do, to your community. It's something that should not have been done the way that they did it.
So talk about that a little bit. I know there's a podcast called the Coalition for Accountability. They talked about some of the things that have taken place, things that have been said or done by Mayor Booker, by others affiliated with him, particularly as it relates to the strong mayor form of government or his current form of government, which is the manager form of government. What is your stance on that? Should you be elected as trustee? Would you try to, I don't know if reverse is the correct term, or try to, change that back to the standard that it is now, or just have some type of modification? Because, I find that with the village being $8 million plus in debt, you can't afford to pay anybody anything more. That's just simple accounting. You don't need to be a CPA to figure out if you are $8+ million insolvent in whatever category. And I was told it's mostly in pension, which is another conversation. I had to get to that point. But nonetheless, the bottom line on that balance sheet shows a negative 8% or 8 million in parentheses that shows negativity. So how do you justify giving a pay increase when you aren't even up to point at there? So what is your stance on that?
Yeah, I just think it's negligent to me. It just shows a level of uncaring for the way that our budget is set and what we need to do to become a better village. It's really self-serving, I would say. And so the residents don't deserve that. We deserve individuals that are focused on how to create something better for the whole community, not just for ourselves. So even with like a lot of these trips that they go on and everybody's so interested in, I want to do that too. I want to, but okay, when you do that, what do you bring back? What do you bring back to the community, and how does it benefit us versus building up yourself? And so all of these things, I hope that people take into consideration. It's frustrating to me to witness some of the blind trust, and knowing that we have a deficit, knowing that those are the things that we should be focused on. And so if we're focused on building buildings to honor ourselves, to creating a civic center, when we have horrible streets and our conditions that our community is in, we need better policing. We need more things than just creating a civic center. I just think that a lot of these things that they're focused on is not really beneficial.
Thank you for saying that. So are you saying that you are against the strong mayor form of government and it should stay the way it is right now?
Yes, I'm against the strong mayor form of government. I think having that much power to one person has never benefited Maywood. We have had, way back when, this power, this level of or the form of government. And I think right now, not having people, in place as a part-time mayor, having a salary of $65,000, $75,000 is really untenable. It's unnecessary. Changing our form of government is unnecessary. How does it benefit us? How does it make us a better community? Putting all of that power into one person, especially when we have the things that we have coming down the pipeline from the federal government, from the federal level, then you want to add on to it these same kind of conditions that we would put on ourselves in a local level. And we're already facing these high taxes. It's like our community needs a break. So we need time to just focus on getting our debt situation under control. We need time to focus on building up our community, working with people that will help us to do better, make the community better, not just, putting a lot of power into one person.
Understood. So I have to ask you a question, just just being as transparent as you can, being that this pay increase would take effect next election. I mean, the next set of leadership will come in, including that of the mayor. Would you try to reverse that vote, or would you just accept the increase as trustee? What is your position on that?
So are you saying the trustees' salary portion?
Yes. Yeah. Trustee salaries are up. Yeah. In your case,
the trustee salary portion has went up to like $14,000 or something like that. I don't think that's terrible. It may not have ever been increased in a while. So, I mean, $7,000, I think it was before. That's not terrible either. You want to give people something, because what I've noticed is even with my work in the school board and things like that, when things are at a zero, the type of people that you tend to get, or even when you get the people, that can be enticed into other things if they are not fairly compensated in some type of way, or even just, given the value, add some value to the work that they're doing. Right. So I think it's okay. And if the community decides that it's not something that, is necessary, then I wouldn't, be opposed to getting rid of it. It's not, I don't think it's a huge amount, so it shouldn't really be that much of an impact.
But you believe that the 400% increase at the mayor's position is definitely too high. Is that correct?
I do, for a part-time position. So, because that doesn't make sense. It just doesn't make sense.
Right. Okay. Understood. You're watching Let's Talk Maywood and Diversity Today Media. I am currently speaking with Village of Maywood trustee candidate Eileen Olivier. Trustee Brandon has joined us momentarily, but his internet connection is causing him to go back and forth, on and off. So if he's able to come on, we'll bring him on. But in the meantime, we are having a very engaging conversation with candidate Olivier. So as we transition from your role as the candidate to your position on what's happening with the Park District, Mayor Booker stated that all the Park districts should be consolidated. All right. In 2006, there was a referendum. I think in November 2006, there was a referendum that asked the community, do they want the Park District all under one entity? That is the Maywood Park District. The village, in by and large, they wanted all the Park District consolidated under the Maywood Park District. That hasn't happened. And just recently, when I had Mayor Booker on, he stated that this referendum expired in 2009. So to avoid the back and forth controversy, he said what he said, but I knew that in time, as always, the community is very intelligent. They did a fact check, and they did say that is not correct, because in the state of Illinois, there is there's no deadline, if you will. So first of all, what is your position on the Village of Maywood taking over all the parks? And what is your view on Mayor Booker desire to terminate the Park District so that all the parks can come under the Village of Maywood?
Yeah, I think that, having the village take over the parks is not a good idea. Right now, we have some great candidates that's running for Park District. And I know that when these candidates, Bernica Smith, you got Tavion Johnson, Anthony Cook, Jeff Fowler, Norma Alonzo. So these people are looking to clean house. They want to do audits. They want to find out the situation with the park and how to make it better. And I believe that they will do that. And so that's what's needed for the park. That's the only thing that's needed is better leadership there. So why would we need to have this separate entity taken over by a village administration that is not able to keep their own house in order. That, we have issues with our own budget that we need to deal with. So I don't think that having one entity, because the village promised to give those parks back to the park district, which would then allow them to get that budget that comes with those parks, and so that they can do more. And I think that the village should keep its word and follow through on that.
So you are against the village of Maywood taking over all the parks and dissolving the Maywood Park District, just for clarity's sake. Okay.
Yes,
so I want. I'm sorry. Go ahead, ma'am.
No, I'm just saying yes, I am correct.
Okay. You mentioned that, as a reminder, the village of Maywood is in a huge deficit. But we have not talked about the casino money, the revenue that's generated in the balance sheet of the Maywood Village budget. Mayor Booker didn't talk much about that, except for saying that none of that can be allocated to the park district to help with their budget situation. So my question for you is, would you move forward in asking for a strategic plan or some type of plan to be implemented to talk about the future of the village? Now, Mayor Booker mentioned a feasibility study, and sure, that's fine on a small level, but we're looking at more of a macro level because there's a macro problem in the village of Maywood. Okay. And with that, a strategic plan, it looks at the short and long term. And so the feasibility study is inclusive of a strategic plan or comprehensive plan, if you will. So what is your view on having some type of strategic plan that has not existed in the village since 2013? What is your position on that?
Well, when they started that comprehensive plan, I was a part of the the focus group or the community input. So we were excited to see them actually coming up with planning out what our future would look like. But I think, as you said previously in some other interviews, I saw that not a lot came out of it, but there is a blueprint there. So with all of these ideas of feasibility studies and things like that, those are entities that will get paid to do those studies. You could study forever. And, unless you're actually applying some action to it, as you're just steady getting these contracts and paying these individuals to do these studies, and it's still not moving forward. So I would like to see us, review our comprehensive plan, look for areas where we can update, and maybe that could save us some money. Like, we already have an idea of where we would like to do, but of course, like you said, that was back in 2013. And so, it would definitely need to be updated. And I think that we can probably work from there. So I'm all for having a strategic plan or a comprehensive plan that gives us a blueprint on where we're going and how we'll get there. And so I think that it's important. And I would look forward to seeing how we can do that in a more economical way.
Sounds good. That's really good to know, because I remember going to those meetings when the village hired a consulting firm, and they did this PowerPoint presentation. And I actually was one of the speakers, and I said, a strategic plan should go no longer than 10 years. And it's been long overdue even at that point. So obviously Mayor Booker wasn't the mayor at that time, but certainly we've gone past 10 years. We're in 12 years since that strategic plan was implemented. So, if you have a strategic plan, in my opinion, because I work in the DMV, I work with candidates in different arenas during election season. And one of the things that they talk about consistently is implementing a strategic plan. It doesn't always have to come from just that organization, that entity, but looking at best practices. How are the neighboring communities, the neighboring businesses doing? So my follow-up question with you before we bring Trustee Brandon on, because it seems like he's ready. If you are elected as trustee, would you bring this up with your colleagues, those who are even on, Mayor Booker's side, who may be slow of foot to implementing such a plan? Would you work with them willingly or unwillingly?
Mhm. Absolutely. I would definitely like to bring that subject up. We would, I would love to see a focus group get started on it, whether it's, we do something collaboratively, and do some town halls and be able to get some input and find out what it
Mhm.
is that, and some surveys just to find out what it is that our community is looking for and how can we then, like you said, get some things that we all agree on. There's definitely going to be a thread of agreement because everyone should want to see the village move forward, right? And to do better. So if we could find the things that we agree on and be able to work on those things, I think that would be help us to lead the charge and get something done.
Indeed. Thank you for that response. Is very necessary and very much appreciated. Terry, do we have Trustee Brandon? Is he ready to come on? If so, bring him on in. Trustee Brandon, can you hear me?
Yeah,
Okay, very good. Good evening, sir. How are you?
I'm doing great. I am doing fantastic, actually.
All right. So thank you. I know that this is the last 2 minutes. This is like the coming home stretch of a basketball game. The last 2 minutes, if you will, because in just 2 days is election time. So how are things going for you right now in your run for mayor?
I am truly excited about the energy that's being felt across the community on every corner of the village of Maywood. We are feeling the energy, and our team is excited. We have a dynamic team of individuals that have been working truly every single day with no days off. We recognize how critical this election is for our community and the future of the village of Maywood, and truly have been out there doing the work, engaging with voters, hearing what their concerns are, and just trying to make sure that we hear all of their voices to be able to take those concerns with us when we are victorious on April the 1st.
All right. So you mentioned the future of Maywood. This I can't remember in all my years of being part of Maywood that there's a more critical time, a more critical election time than today, than this cycle. The other time, Trustee Brandon, was when Joe Freelon was running for mayor to become the first Black mayor of Maywood. That's the only other time that comes to my memory. Like, what are your thoughts about that? Do you agree that this is probably one of the most critical time in this generation?
I most certainly agree that this is a critical election. And the reason being is simply because of the referendums that are on the ballot, which is looking to change the form of government that we currently operate under, which is a village manager form of government. And so, that makes it a critical election. And so the voters will have the chance to vote on this critical matter. And so for me, as it relates to this particular item, and I can't, tell voters which way to vote on it. But what I can do is lead with the facts. When the item came before me, I voted no on this particular item to allow it to go to the ballot as a binding referendum, simply because the residents were not involved, were not engaged in the conversation. Neither was the board. There was no prior conversations at the board level regarding this measure. We, didn't have or wasn't presented with the pros and cons of what this whole ordeal would even look like, what impact that it was going to have on the community, or the cost that would be associated with it either. And so I voted no for those reasons. And so when you are in these roles, in these positions, it's important for us to do our due diligence so we understand the impact that it's going to have on our communities and just the cost of it all as well.
Indeed. Now, you are in the seat as a trustee. You've had many a conversation with your colleagues and, of course, Mayor Booker about issues such as this proposed change of government. And so, as this,
and I want to just make sure that we just be as truthful as we possibly can. So we haven't really had a lot of conversations at all. The item came up during one board meeting, and it was voted up or voted down. And so there was no conversations other than it coming up at one board meeting. I don't go off of like water cooler conversations. If the conversation didn't happen in the board chambers, it did not happen, right? And so we have to make sure that we've been inclusive and making sure that people are aware of the decisions that we are making and how we came to those conclusions as well. And as it relates to this particular measure that's on this referendum that's on the ballot, there was no previous conversations, none, zero, from the board level, other than the board just having to vote on this item without having any conversations or really having any additional, thought on the matter at all, right? And so, to me, it was a disservice, right? It was disservice to the residents of Maywood, first of all, and it was a disservice to the board as well, because we're sitting board members, and we find out on the agenda when we received it that this item is on the agenda. So now we have to do what we can to educate the community on the matter, to get them involved in the conversation, because it's a conversation that requires their input and their involvement and engagement. And so to me, it's a disservice. And I say simply shame on those board members who voted on it without including the residents. It's a total disservice to the residents of the village of Maywood.
As a candidate for mayor, who's the current sitting trustee, you mentioned truthfulness. And I want to be careful how I ask this question, because I don't want to insinuate any lies. But I will say that some of the comments that were made on the podcast in a previous interview with Mayor Booker and Trustee Sanchez and other candidates, stating, for example, the isolation of the Park District in 2006, that referendum had allegedly expired. What is your position on that, Trustee Brandon, as it relates to turning over the parks to the Maywood Park District and just focusing on village business, or is that inclusive of the Park District?
Yeah, and I did get a chance to tune in a little bit to the interview when you conducted it with the other side, and I was just truly baffled that they was just so unaware of how we, came to an understanding of the transferring of those parks and recreational operations with the Park District. That was a referendum that was put on the ballot by citizens, right? And they voted on it. They voted in favor to consolidate recreation, to have everything under one house, which makes perfect sense. There's no need for the village to be doing recreation and to have a park district doing it as well. It makes sense that it be consolidated for the taxpayers as well. And so when they stated that it had expired, that told me they don't understand what a binding referendum is. It don't expire, right? And so what happens is it's just about the execution of it and making sure that we uphold what the citizens wanted back in 2006, and that was to make sure that recreation was really under one house. And so, it just, tells me how unaware and uninformed, they are in regards to that referendum that was put on the ballot. And that was a concrete referendum that was put on the ballot. And so the village of Maywood needs to do the following. And we need to make sure that we uphold our end of the bargain. We need to make sure that we work in conjunction, because that's what communities do, with our park district, to make sure that we transfer the parks over. After this election, I believe and I know there's going to be some strong people elected to that board, like Tavion Johnson, Norman Yvette Alonzo, and Anthony Cook, who have the skill set, the mindset to go in and do the necessary work to ensure that that park district is strong, that they're being held accountable, and that they're being transparent as it relates to their operations, and that they are, creating, park district that represents everybody within the village. And so we're going to move forward on transferring those parks over, and we're going to uphold our end of the bargain as it relates to making sure that we have a smooth transition with those parks and making sure that we work as a community should together, truly together, to make sure that the park district is strong and that they have what they need, and that we are all working together in the spirit of one, because that's what real communities do, and that's what Maywood has always been about. Helping each other, uplifting each other, not tearing each other down or trying to dissolve a whole taxing body, but working with each other to build each other up.
Indeed. You know, Trustee Brandon, I've known you for many years, even when you were a young, 10, 11-year old, coming to our public speaking classes when we were at Canaan Church, and you were always going to the village board meetings. So long before you became a trustee, you were doing your thing as a child, as a teenager, started a nonprofit working with youth. So I can attest you've always been about community. Here you are as an adult, as a public official, and I see that passion, as others do who actually know you. See that passion when you have words with either a colleague or Mayor Booker. Um, and I don't know if frustrated is the right word when you are taking them to task. What goes through your mind when you are having this grappling with these other public officials? And is that your motivation for running for mayor because you believe you could do it better than what has been done over the past 4 years?
What propels me to run in this particular race at this particular juncture is not only my passion, but my skills and abilities. And not only do I believe I can do it better, I know I could do it better. I know Maywood better than any other candidate that's running. I'm the most experienced municipal official in this race, and we're getting ready to elevate this community like no one has ever seen before. I mean, as you just mentioned earlier, I've been involved in Maywood since I was in seventh grade, attending village board meetings. I was brought to my first city board meeting by a sitting village trustee who we both know, Cheryl Washington, and I
Yes.
never stopped going and I never stopped being engaged. And I even got more involved, right? And more engaged and speaking up on issues on behalf of our young people and our seniors and our businesses. Just really being their voice and being their advocate. And at the end of the day, for me, it's really about giving back to the community what it has given to me over the years. Maywood has been truly good to me. As a kid growing up, I remember every year having an internship working downtown at the Cook County Recorder of Deeds office. But just so many opportunities that were made available for me. I feel like it is my responsibility to make sure that we are tapping into every talent that we have with so many talents, whether it's our prime location, whether it's our strong housing stock, or our rich history as a community. The
Yes.
folks here in the town, we have a lot of brain power in this community, and I'm going to make sure, as the next mayor of the village of Maywood, that we're tapping into that brain power and that we're tapping into every single one of those talents as well.
Indeed. I want to ask you about the current deficit that the village face. As Madam Olivier, says so succinctly, um, you're taking on additional debt from the village, who are also in a hole. The village is in a hole to the tune of over $8 million in debt. Um, and so, as it was explained to me by Mayor Booker and Trustee Sanchez, most of that is in the pension fund. How did that happen from your purview? Is it because it was underfunded? I mean, how did that debt occur? And what is the plan to take the village out of the debt as mayor of the village of Maywood?
Well, first and foremost, we're going to be more conservative about our spending. Under this, as they call it, under their administration, they have created these departments and these positions paying up to six figures in some of these roles. Some of these roles are unnecessary positions, and to me, it's almost as if we're competing with the park district, and I think it's unnecessary. Right now, the village's credit rating is at a B, which is a junk bond rating, which would
Yeah,
make it difficult for the village to be able to borrow money from
more money.
any
Mhm.
financial institution. And so we have to be more laser focused on our finances. And as the next mayor of the village of Maywood, I'm going to do just that. We got to make sure that we're not spending more than what we have and throwing parties every week and utilizing the village funds as our own political piggy bank. Those days will be over starting on April the 2nd after I am elected. And so, I look forward to bringing people back to the table. We got to make sure that we are, empowering our finance committee to be, active, really active, and be able to forecast things better for us as a village as well. And just to make sure that, we're spending dollars on where they need to be spent. And that includes investing in people and investing in local roads and local streets and things that matter most to the residents of the village of Maywood and not having parties every week off the taxpayers' dime.
Understood. Understood. Trustee Brandon, I'm glad you brought up the finance committee, which is essential in any organization, whether it's a municipality or a corporation or a small business or a nonprofit. So with that, in that vein, you mentioned investing, not just in people, but, and beyond. The monies that come through the casino, all right, how does that look in terms of strategic planning for the future? Does that go into reducing the debt or, reducing the taxpayer burden as far as, property taxes in particular? How does that look with that additional revenue coming in? That was a blessing that really wasn't expected. How does that look?
It really was a blessing. I just want to give kudos to Senator Kimberly Lyford for our hometown champion in Springfield for including Maywood and Speaker Welch as well for thinking Maywood as it relates to what I consider that historic legislation and making sure Maywood was included in the revenue that's being received from the casino in the city of Chicago. And that revenue is looking to increase when they finish the building downtown, when they finish building the new facility as well. And so how I look at it is, those dollars were, just allow for us to do a few major things, just throughout the community, like investing in our old age infrastructure that we have throughout the community, while also helping us to address the $8 million in debt that we have as well. But we have to be laser focused. We got to make sure that we're operating with a collective vision, that everybody is on the same page, and that one person is not in control of everything, but it's all of us a part of this conversation and helping to shape the village into one that we want to see in the future.
Indeed. I'm not going to keep you much longer because, like I said, I know this is coming down to the wire for you, and you are the most important seat that you're running for in the village. So Mayor Booker and Trustee Sanchez stated that over 100 businesses have been launched in the village since he's been in office. What contributions have the trustee made towards making this happen? Because it appears that he was the lead for all the businesses that were started in the village of Maywood. So I want to know if it was an individual effort or was it something that was done as a board in terms of meeting with the prospective businesses and making sure that the process was completed with them starting their own businesses or launching their business?
It couldn't be far away from the truth. Listen, and again, I tuned in, and part of me was just like, okay, how many lies can we tell in one interview? And so as I was listening, I was just like, wow. And so they would have it to be that all of these businesses just came in when they got elected or when Booker came in, and it's almost given this whole theory that like the superhero theory, like he is like a Superman or Batman coming in to save Maywood. Maywood don't need saving. Listen, it's all about the people of this community. We already know what our talents are. We know that we are a resilient community. And a lot of those businesses that they talked about were pretty much already here and already coming to the village. When we talk about the Baptist retirement home on 4th and Randolph, that project was already sealed and dealed prior to Booker ever thinking about running for office. First of all, when it relates to AVW, who expanded, I was part of that critical vote to provide them with the necessary resources so they can expand their business. When it relates to National Cycle, one of the oldest businesses in the community, it was a critical vote for me. And almost, it didn't happen when it relates to making sure that they had some additional support from the county and from the village as it relates to providing them with that additional tax incentive that they needed to be able to, withstand, the pandemic and, just what was happening as it relates to their business practices, and the things that they provided. And so, a lot of businesses were already in line of coming to the village of Maywood, to send a message that, I brought all of these businesses to the village of Maywood. It's a disservice, first of all, to the staff whose jobs are to retain and attract businesses to the community and to the whole economic development department, it almost appears like, well, if you're doing all of these things, what is everybody else doing, right? And so most certainly, I have attended the Illinois Retail Conference downtown with staff, advocating for new businesses, advocating for people to think Maywood as well. What we have seen come from this administration is the bullying of businesses. And this is something that you can Google as it relates to the interfaith housing development where Lorraine's liquor store was used to be.
Oh, yeah.
You're aware of the location.
Yeah, 5,000.
We didn't even know. First of all, this is like a private entity, and they got the retail space at the bottom, and they're looking to bring in a grocer to that first floor. We didn't even know that they had even identified somebody, and that person was identified to come in, and everything was put on hold because they were being bullied by the mayor. Not only were they being bullied, but almost told that the business wasn't going to happen. And so we found out through their attorney when they sent legal documents saying they was getting ready to sue the village of Maywood for close to $1 million because we have people who are not experts in these areas putting themselves in these positions that they had no business putting dealing with as it relates to economic development. And so I was able to step in and to inform the community because their dollars were going to be on the hook for this lawsuit. And the business had every right to open up in an area that's deemed commercial. And so there's this idea that, just happening across the community that if you don't do it their way, it's the highway. Maywood is open for business. And we know how to conduct business as a community as well. We're not going back to those days where we messing up business deals because we have people thinking they know what they are doing in these respective spaces. No, we're going to let the professionals, people who have the background and experience, do their job and bring in businesses and other opportunities into our community as well. And so for me, it's just really all about making sure that we're just being honest and uplifting our staff and empowering them as well, and letting them know that we see that their work and the effort that they're putting in. And it's not just one person; it's a whole community effort. 100 something, and that number. They should provide you with some facts as it relates to that number because it seems extreme to me.
So you're saying it's not realistic to say 100
No.
businesses were launched in the last 4 years? That's
No,
unrealistic?
show me. They will have to drive around town. When you drive around in that 5th and Quincy area, you see the blight that still exists in these areas. There is still a lot of work to do across this community as it relates to bringing in businesses. This, I guess, as they say, this administration or their administration has not brought in 100 businesses over the past 4 years. Absolutely not.
Understood. But you have been part of the movement to launch businesses, right? I mean, you have taken part in.
Absolutely. Listen, I've been on the front line making sure that we expand our TIF programs, making it easier, more accessible for businesses to tap into it, removing the red tape. I created and expanded our facade program to the business improvement program, understanding that when businesses open, that there's still a lot of heavy costs that they struggle with, whether it's, a roofing issue, whether it's, plumbing issue or electrical issue. I expanded that program simply because I understood some of their struggles by simply talking to them, as they were, opening their doors and seeing what was taking them so long to get open and get started. And so really just had a clear understanding of that just by going into some of these locations and hearing directly from some of these business owners of what it's going to take for us to, create an easier process to get businesses jump-started and off the ground. And that was something that was directly spearheaded by me. When you see a lot of development as it relates to the housing development that's taking place across the community, I reestablished what is called the bundling program to make it more attractive to developers to develop on buildable lots throughout the community. And so they're able to get lots at a discounted rate if they buy like 3 or 4, and they have a short turnaround time to build, residential on those lots as well. And so I most certainly have been a strong advocate for the Village of Maywood. I have not been sitting on my hands and and just sitting back, just waiting on things to happen. We've been going out there making things happen on behalf of the residents, because that's why they put us there. They didn't put us there to be puppets or to just sit back and just allow one person to control the show. That's why this government was created in the way in which it was created, so that you have more than one advocate at the table. Because I just believe that, they just understood that's, the best way to get things done.
Indeed. So you're watching Let's Talk Maywood on Diversity Today Media. I have our guest, Trustee Isiah Brandon, who's running for mayor for the Village of Maywood. Just a couple more questions, Trustee Brandon, if you don't mind. So my first question is in regards to the form of government. So I'm not going to assume, I just want to hear you say, for confirmation, that you are against a strong mayor form of government, and you are in favor of keeping the current mayor manager form of government in place right now. So you're against strong mayor government, right?
And so I'm a lead again with how I voted on the issue when it came before me, because I want to make sure I don't put myself in any legal situations as it relates to this matter. So when the item came before me as a sitting village trustee, when it came before me in my board packet, I voted no on it. I voted no for the following reasons: the citizens of Maywood were not engaged. The board itself was not engaged. There was no conversations other than one conversation when it was time to vote on the matter. And so I think it's a disservice to the residents of the Village of Maywood to have a binding referendum on the ballot that's going to change the entire face of governance in the Village of Maywood without having the residents at the table helping to shape this whole ordeal. And I just think it's a disservice. And again, I say shame on those elected officials who voted on it without encouraging the residents to be a part of the conversation from the very beginning.
Very good. And because the pay increase for the trustee seats and the mayor seat is going to take place when the next mayor is installed, are you for that huge increase that take place for a part-time mayor? We're talking almost like 400% for a part-time mayor, because that was a boiled down to. What's your position on that, Trustee Brandon?
Again, as a sitting village trustee, I voted no on the matter as well. I think it's ridiculous for somebody to think that they, should get paid that type of salary on a part-time job. And when I heard the narrative that came from, Booker, it was just unacceptable. And it told me that, the ties, that he just simply don't have to this community. We don't get into these communities to become rich and famous, right? It's all about service. And that's really what the foundation of our campaign is built on: public service over self-service. My heart for this community is too great to try and rob it, right? A community that you just mentioned earlier that's already $8 million in debt. And to come in to, to request that type of salary, to me is unacceptable. And I am so happy to the residents for, just being, getting involved in the conversation and just seeing what is happening as it relates to their government, and also saying that, no, we cannot afford him. He's too expensive. He's too expensive for the Village of Maywood. He might need to look for a real job. No, this is a public service job. This is not corporate America where you can come and make 6 figures. He needs to go find a job. I have a 9-to-5 job that I go to every day, Monday through Friday, and I encourage him to go do the same.
Yeah. Would you accept the salary, or would you try to bring it back to the table to modify it? Because certainly, I can imagine the amount of work it's going to take.
It needs to be modified, and I've already stated, if it shall take effect, that I would, most certainly give, some of that salary back in the form of a scholarship, or, to some nonprofit organizations in town who are on the grounds doing the work, or creating something within the village where we could support youth or our senior community.
Finally, Trustee Brandon, should you be elected mayor for the village of Maywood, what does the first 100 days look like for you?
I appreciate that question. And so what we're going to do is, take an evaluation of the organization to make sure we have the right people in the right places, and just doing the job to the very best of their abilities. I'm a strong advocate for this community, and I want to make sure that we have strong advocates, over there at Village Hall. And I think there's some critical roles that we need to review and take a look at, and to make sure that specifically that we are as it relates to the village manager person who's currently sitting in the village manager role, he hasn't even been evaluated. And they gave him a $5,000 bonus without any evaluation, without any assessment. Where do they do that at? That's unacceptable. And so we're going to bring in a diverse team of leaders that include myself for mayor, Cassandra Green for clerk, Dora Velasquez, Eileen, Olivier, and Rachel Montgomery for village trustee. That's going to make sure that we are providing proper evaluations and proper assessments so that we can see where people are at and see if people are in the right areas as it relates to some of these critical roles in the village of Maywood, and making sure that we're getting ready to approve our upcoming 2024 or 2025, 2026 budget as well. We want to make sure that those dollars are being spent on things that are necessary for the taxpayers of the village of Maywood. And again, not having all of these parties every other week to make ourselves feel good, but we want to make sure that we are doing what's right by the people. So we're going to be looking at those dollars as well that are currently being budgeted, and making sure that those dollars are put to use in the right way as well.
Very well. And how does the increase in Hispanic population, I promise this is my final question, how does the increase in Hispanic population fit into your vision? Because there's complaints that they are largely ignored when it comes to programs, services, and things of that nature.
And that is most certainly on point, and it's most certainly unfortunate. And that's why we're running a diverse team of individuals, like Dora Velasquez, who would be the first Latina elected to the Board of Trustees when she's elected on April the 1st. And as it relates to the Park District, Normie Alonzo, she's going to be the first Latina elected to the Park District. And that's why we're running a diverse team. And so we need to make sure that we are able to communicate with all of our community, and specifically the Hispanic community as well, making sure that our communications as it relates to our newsletter, our website, activities that we do, we need to have them at the table on our commissions that are going to be back citizen-led as well, to make sure we're hearing directly from them. And some of the things I have been engaged in over the years is, just zoning in on some of those areas and some of those communities just across the village of Maywood through these pop-up block club initiatives that I have throughout the community as well, that allows us to really hear what their ideas, what their concerns are, and what their struggles are as well, and that helps me to just be an advocate on their behalf as well. And so, in working with our diverse team, we're going to be able to make sure that we have programs and policies that reflect the village of Maywood as a whole, and making sure that we create a role for Hispanic liaison position throughout the community to engage the Hispanic community like never before, because we want to make sure that we are representing every corner of the community in our best way.
Indeed. Trustee Brandon, I want to thank you for appearing on our podcast. I know that time is short for you as it relates to the election day. I'm sure that there's some more doors you want to knock on, some more citizens you would like to speak to. So I'm going to give you a moment. And it's most importantly, that's right. Turn the page. So I'm going to give you a minute or two for closing thoughts, and please don't hang up after you give your closing thoughts. So closing thoughts for the audience, please, by all means.
First and foremost, I want to thank you all for allowing me to come onto this platform to share with you my views and ideas for creating a stronger, more resilient village of Maywood. Isiah Brandon here. I've served Maywood pretty much my entire life. I've been committed to this village. I'm the most experienced municipal elected official in this race. And we have a diverse team of individuals that's going to bring their time and their talents to the Village of Maywood Board. Cassandra Green as your next village clerk. Eileen Olivier, Dora Velasquez, and Rachel Montgomery, who are going to come in with all of their talents and energy as your next trustees, and our Park District candidates. We got Tavion Johnson, Anthony Cook, and Norma Yvette Alonzo. They're getting ready to transform our park district. And our library board candidates, Marcus Cash and Brianna Henderson, we're excited about them as well. We're going to work collectively as one unit to make sure that we are creating a strong and resilient community for all of our residents. I believe that my running mates, they have the heart, they have the vision, and they have the skill set in order to make it happen on behalf of the residents of the Village of Maywood. And listen, Maywood, this election is critical. I encourage you to be involved, to be engaged. You can vote early at the Maywood Public Library, 121 South Fifth Avenue, on tomorrow. And then election day is on Tuesday. And that's April the 1st. So I encourage everybody to come out to be involved. And our future is in the residents' hands. So I encourage them to shape our future and vote for the best team in town. That's the People's Choice Party. Thank you all so much for having me. May God's grace, peace, and blessings be upon you all and the entire Village of Maywood as well.
Thank you, Trustee Brandon. Thank you, Trustee Brandon. And Ms. Eileen Olivier, please provide final thoughts for our audience. Thank you again for joining us tonight.
And thank you for having me. I appreciate the opportunity to be able to talk to you and to my village. And I just wanted to say that, like Trustee and soon to be Mayor Isaiah Brandon said, this is a critical point in our community right now. We have to get this right. We have to get it right for our future, for our children. And so I just wanted to let my community know that I have been someone that has advocated for, supported many programs, many organizations in the community that have been on the ground, doing the work. And a lot of times people say that, winners do the work. I've been winning, and I've been, involved in a lot of things that I feel would help to bring resources to our community. I'm currently working on Land 60 with River Edge and Proviso Township to bring a resource and a help center, a website where people can go there and anything that they're looking for help with, they can get it through one click. And so we want to be able to provide ease and resources and making sure that, when you come to Proviso, you can be taken care of. So I have a background as a realtor. I've been sitting member of our ethics panel. So I help to make sure that policies are adhered to. I have contract negotiation skill, home ownership, understanding. I've worked with our seniors. I've worked with our youth. I'm currently the president for District 209 Scholarship. So I'm invested in our schools because I know that a big chunk of my taxes go into the school. And so I just want to be a resource for our community and let you know how I would work because you see me work. So this is somebody that you would understand coming in the door, how they would operate. And I'm asking you to vote for me.
Thank you very much, Madam Olivier. It's been real. This election season is the most critical election of this generation for the Village of Maywood. I've been part of Maywood since 1972. So that's over 5 decades. My family is still very much involved and engaged in the Village of Maywood. And when I think about the leaders of the past, those who come to mind immediately, the late Don Williams, Ralph Connor, Joe Freelon, and then we think about Karen Yarbrough, Eugene Moore, Ron Rivers, the Rivers family. There are a lot of names, too many names. The Hampton family, that's the name I was trying to think of. So much history in the Village of Maywood. The last thing we want to do is to vision these leaders of the past tossing in their graves because we can't get our act together. Certainly the proudest moment that I had as a young man was when Mayor Joe Freelon became mayor, the first Black mayor in the Village of Maywood. And all the others who followed him as trustees, including another person who's still with us, Alonzo Castile, who was a Maywood trustee who actually lived on my block on 15th and Maywood Drive. The block parties, the Maywood, Taste of Maywood, Maywood Fest, Little League Baseball, Fairhampton Pool being crowded, walking in your neighborhood safely, summer jobs, District 89 schools running fluently, District 209 schools, Proviso East, Proviso West, before there was a PMSA. But every election, the turnout was certainly greater than 15%. I can tell you that much, because it meant something. It meant that they were voting for the future of the village of Maywood. Where do you stand as a voter as it relates to the future of the village of Maywood? You've seen how things have gone the last 4 years. And so I would challenge you not to vote for someone just because you have name recognition or because they have name recognition. For there is no I in team. And certainly Maywood would not succeed with a authoritative form of government. Collectivism, democracy is what's going to drive Maywood forward. And somehow we need to get back to that. Because where there is no democracy, everything else is diabolical. There is no unity in the community. Voters, please get out there and increase the numbers. Increase numbers. That's greater than 15%. You can't vote through social media. Your words don't mean anything if you say something on social media. It matters most when you go to the poll, just like our forefathers did when they went to the polls and voted for the best candidate. I want to thank all of the candidates who appeared on our podcast, particularly tonight with trustee Isiah Brandon, who's running for village mayor of Maywood, and Madam Eileen Olivier, who's running for trustee of the village of Maywood. Please come out and vote. Nobody, as Pastor Wiley said, nobody should push or prod you to go vote. Find out where your poll is and take yourself to the poll and vote on April 1st. Until next time, when we start our new cycle of podcasts and guests, vote and be safe. Like us on Facebook, subscribe on YouTube. I am Dr. Reggie Ratliff. It's been a pleasure. God bless you. Be safe. Good night.